For Port Macquarie internal students, we have a public holiday this Monday, so these recordings are replacing a workshop time. Please have a go at these workshop exercises for this week. You might end up using them for your own assignment, or you might not, but the idea really here is to give you some extra sort of experimental tools with typography. So have a go at them, and most of all, have some fun. For online students, please just do them at your leisure. And again, if you decide to use some of these techniques in your cookbook assessment, fantastic. You might not, you might have a completely different style that you're after, in which case that's completely fine. So the first exercise that we're doing today is using the Envelope Distort tool, and we're going to use the mesh option to shape type within a shape. So here on the screen we have an instance of just a silhouette of a buffalo and the saying from the song "Give me a home where the buffalo roam." This was done using a hand lettery sort of style of typeface. So these typefaces can be a little bit more forgiving when it comes to the mesh option of the Envelope Distort tool. Another example that I have here is one that I did that uses a sans serif typeface, which is a little bit more, it's a little trickier to distort than a hand-lettered one, just because of the spacing of the letters and the sharpness of the letters. But again, we're not after perfection here. We're after sort of like the handmade style, I guess. So it really, at the end of the day, doesn't really matter what style of typeface you use. In the end, what you're doing is you're shaping the type within a frame. Now you'll notice with this one, the really important thing here was to create a sort of very equal space towards the edges. So up here where we have the no, the only, and here the giving in, this space around here, I tried to really make that even. It's not exact, and that's fine and everything. Again, we're going after something that's really handmade. So sometimes the beauty is in imperfection, really. We are going to simplify this today. So I'm just going to create a new document. So hit Command New or Control N, sorry. And we're just going to create a new document. So Command on a Mac, Control on a PC. N, and we're just going to create an A4 size in portrait posture, layout, whatever it is. And we're just going to play, I've got an image of a capsicum here, so I'm just going to place it. I'm going to find my capsicum image, because you're doing a cookbook and all. And I'm just going to place that in. Now in the layers panel you'll see here that I have open, you'll see it's just come in as layer 1. What I want to do is just select that, and I want to just make that a template layer. So you can go to the flyout menu and you'll have this template option there. What that does is reduce the opacity of the image, and then it also locks the layer here. So what we can do is use it as a trace layer. So we're just going to create a new layer here, and then we're going to double click on the type, and we're going to call that our artwork. And then we're going to click on the capsicum layer, and we're just going to say template. And this is a really good thing to do, because it just helps you to really organize your layers. Usually I don't really use a lot of layers in Illustrator and InDesign. The only time where I do use a lot of layers is when I'm using templates from, say, print manufacturers and things like that. I like to keep layers really at a minimum in these sorts of programs. In Photoshop, of course, everything is layered automatically for you. So these work a little bit differently, and the reason why we use layers is a little bit different. But some people like to create their artwork in multiple layers, so it's really just up to you. Okay, now what we're going to do is, sorry, I'll just open that up. Make sure that you've got your template layers selected here. Then we're just going to select our artwork layer instead. We're going to zoom in on this, and we're going to hit P for our pen tool, and we're going to zoom in a little bit more, and we're just going to start tracing this capsicum. And what we're going to end up with is a silhouette shape that we can add our type to. And you'll notice here that we have the lovely fill, so let's just get rid of that because we don't want that. And just going to sort of follow the curves of the capsicum around. You'll notice that I'm just sort of using my Bezier pen. Where you see this curve comes up and around, I'm just going to go there and just click and drag. So what happens is that you end up with a much neater line. And that one didn't, so let's just go back there a little and to here. Now with the Bezier pen tool, what happens is that the handles, see these two handles here, they affect each other. So sometimes when your curve is a little bit too long, it's going to affect the next line over. So you just might sometimes want to come back in and redo that, which I just did. And then we're just going to go up the stem here. And we don't need to be too fussy because really, you know, we want the general shape. Come around and down that way. A bit far there, sorry about that. Going on autopilot a little bit. And for those of you who are not that familiar with Bezier pen, it's a really good tool to practice because it does take some getting used to just because of the way that the handles operate. As again, you can see it's all wibbly wobbly and all that. So I do recommend that you just have a go at it because it is an incredibly useful tool. And once you get used to it, then of course you'll find that the pen tool is actually also in InDesign and Photoshop. Now in this last point here, I'll just show you what happened then. Is when I went over that line, it just completed the shape. So now I have a closed shape, which is great. I'm going to zoom out for a little moment. And then what I want to do is just swap these over. So I want a fill and not a stroke. And there I have my capsicum shape. And I can take a look at that if I make my template invisible and just press escape and hit V for my selection tool. There's our capsicum. So great. Now what we want to do is we want to fill it with type. So we want a few lines because if we have one large word in here, it's actually going to be too distorted for us to read. So what we might do is just have a few lines here. So we're going to say capsicums are, or what should we say? Capsicums are full of vitamin C. Let us go back to our typography for a moment. So let's go with one of those typefaces that's a little bit more hand lettery style. So this is Active Regular. It's quite a nice typeface and it's really nice to use in an instance like this. And then we're also going to make it white. They're type white, so that we can see it on the black. And then we're just going to increase the size of it a little bit, just up to about 18 should be enough for now, because we are going to distort it anyway. Okay, now we're going to bring that up. And what I'm going to do is just grab and copy that. And I'm just going to hit V. And I'm going to bring this up. And I think I'm going to put this there. And we'll grab those three and we'll put those there. So I'm just trying to figure out right now where this space is going to go, because as you can see, I'm really experimenting here, and I haven't made a plan except a rough plan in my head, and that's the beauty of experimenting. I know sort of what I want to do, but I've just kind of letting the process also just you know, following the process a little bit. Okay, so capsicums is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 letters. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go up to Object with our type selected. We're going to go to Object and we're going to go to Envelope Distort and Make with Mesh. And now we know we have 9 letters, so we're going to go up here and we're going to make sure that this is 9. Now we only need one row because it's one word, but other things that you distort might need a more complex mesh. So this tool is not just for type, it's for all sorts of things that you might want to distort into a shape. So yeah, just keep that in mind and experiment with that. Okay, and we're just going to hit OK. And now if we zoom in here, you'll see that each letter, roughly, you'll see that the space is a little bit different here between the I and the C, but roughly each section has its own section. Okay, so what we're going to start doing now is I'm going to hit my A for the direct selection tool, and I'm going to start just distorting these letters out. And what I'm going to do is just to start shaping it to the area, and I'm going to bring it up to the stem, but I'm going to just bring it around this way. I'm just going to bring all of those up. Don't worry if it gets a little freaky for a while there. Don't worry about that so much, because what we're going to do then is just bring this one all the way out here. And you'll see that, like our pen tool, we have these sorts of handles on the vector points here, so that we can actually manipulate this really nicely. It just takes a little practice, but once you sort of get the hang of it, you'll see that it's really quite a fun thing to do, just to play with type and, you know, give it a bit of a shape. We're just going to bring this one over a little. That doesn't need to be quite so big. Bring that in, and then we want to drag that up so that the C follows the curve of the cap skin in there. That'd be nice. Bring this down a little. Bring these down. So we want it to fill up quite a bit of space here. So we're just going to muck around with it a bit before we mix up the space. So this S doesn't need to be quite so wide, so we're just going to bring this up here. And again, we've got, if we zoom right in here, we've got these handles, so we can undo that. If you grab the wrong thing accidentally, so we can just move this down. So we want to sort of follow the line of the shape that we've got it in. There we go. Bring that up here. And you can even sort of bend it down so that we can have other things follow the shape of this later on as well. So again, we're just going to maybe bring that over. And bring this one over. And you want to sort of zoom in and out, so we want to see, you know, you might like a little bit of this sort of distortion in here as well. So, you know, go for broke, have some fun with it. And I'm just going to keep sort of plugging away at this. And what I'd like you to do now is just head off and go and start on a shape first. So decide what you want to shape. If it's something like a vegetable like this, or it could be something else, whatever it is that you want to actually create the silhouette of first, go ahead and do that. And I'm going to repeat this process for all of these letters. So for this one, what I'm going to do is create just a mesh for this whole space here. So that will actually save me some time. So here we've got 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, but then we've got 2 spaces in here as well. So if we were going to create a mesh for that one, if we're going to create a mesh for that one, envelope distort, make with mesh, then we're going to add about 14 columns. And click OK, and that gives us roughly some space to do that with too. So we can bring that all the way over here. And again, what I want to do is you can actually grab two points at the same time like that. I've just selected one and then brought over those points there, and we can grab those two, bring those over, and we'll grab those two. I'm just selecting one, then holding shift down, and then selecting the other, bring those over. So you can repeat those processes there. If you've sort of messed that up, then you can change and bring those over. You can just bring those, so that it's just easier to kind of create all of these spaces, spacey letters a little bit. Grab the right ones, make sure you grab the right ones. Let's bring those 4 over, just hold the shift key down. And then what we can do is just, it speeds it up a little bit. So then we can go in here and grab our A, distort that all the way down. And we want to just bring that, follow the curve around of that. So then we want to come in here and curve that. We can bring this right to the edge here, and then we can grab our little tool there and we can curve it around like that. So if we want to bring this in and over that way a little bit, just to make it lean a little bit more like that, then we can change this point up here. And it's really important just to use your shortcuts. So right now I'm using my space bar to pan around the document. So here you can see the little hand appears when I use my space bar, and then when I use the space bar and then control, or command or control, it will allow me to zoom in and out. And then if I add option into that, it'll be the minus. So that's space, command or control, and option or alt. So remember your shortcuts, because it'll make this work a lot easier. So again, I'm using A for the direct selection tool. I'm bringing all these points over. Bring those over a little. And this is starting to take some shape now, which is great. It's like, what shape is that? It is going to be a shape, don't you worry. So I'm going to continue with this. I'm not going to bore you with watching all of the little haphazard things that I end up doing, but you get the point about mesh. You get the point about how to create the mesh so that you've got roughly sort of one column per letter of your wording. And now I'm just going to pause this here, and I will come back and I will show you the finished product. Okay, so just coming back to the full scale of the letters, there's something that I want to show you that can make this a little bit easier when you get to trickier bits to fill in. And that is that if I go into this bit here, you can see that I've added another couple of vector points down in here. That's possible to do if I just hit P for the pen tool and the plus sign, and you'll see the little plus come up there. Now I can add in extra vector points, and if I just hit A and click on that, I can then actually I've got a little bit more control in there. So I don't need to add more columns. I can just add in more vector points, which you can see I've done down here as well. So you might want to go and adjust things, like for example, if we have a look here, you'll see that when you zoom out, there's probably a little bit more space in here above vitamins. One thing that I did do with the vitamin one, and I can show you that really quickly, if you can actually double click into these letters, so you can actually still change the typeface and everything. The good thing about the mesh tool is that all of your text is still editable, and you see if I double click that, then it's just editable type. But what I did is, it was quite small to begin with, like this one was, but I just used my transform tool, which is E, just to resize the type to the width of the capsicum before I changed it. So that's another little tip there for that one as well. So I didn't want the C, vitamin C, so I changed it to C, as in because vitamin C helps you to see, does it? Is it vitamin A? I don't know. This isn't a vitamin subject, so, you know, just as well. And you could actually even add some smaller type up into the stem if you wanted to, all of that sort of stuff. So there you have it. It's pretty easy to do, but it's really fun, and you know, it has a really nice sort of handmade feel to it. Again, I used a hand lettering style of typeface for this one, but as you can see with the others, I used something else. Now there's one more point that I wanted to show you about this one here. You can see that I've added this gold foil look to it. Now that is super easy to do. All I did was go to the transparency panel here. Now if I select this, what you'll see is a link here, and you'll see I've got some gold paper here. So you can get textures from all over the place. You can make your own textures. You can find heaps of textures online. I recommend that if you do find, you know, bits of wrappers or papers, or, you know, you're out one day and you see some great rust or whatever it is, get curious about textures, because you can really use them in your design. You can layer them up. You can use them in the transparency panel like this as well. And it's great for manipulating type and creating texture to type as well. Lots of people think that you can only really do this in Photoshop, but actually it's much better to keep your text. In this case, the text is all still editable. It's all still vector. It's just that it's got that raster image that's being used as a mask for it. So it's really nice in that respect. So all I've done here is I have added I've grouped all of my type. And then what I've done is I have, with this picture, I've just placed that in, and then you go into this area. This will be blank. If you double click on that, and then you actually post back in your type, so you can paste in place. If you go to edit, you'll see this paste in place option. So you can paste it back in exactly where it was. And then you just create a mask. So if I release that for a minute, you'll see that there's all the type, and there's the texture. And if I just hit make a mask, there it is. So all you're seeing of this texture here is what I want you to see with the type. Now the opposite of this is if I, for example, select all of this, but not the capsicum. So I'm just going to marquee select it by just clicking and dragging everything. I'm going to hit shift, and I'm going to just select part of the capsicum. And I'm just going to group all of that. And then you'll see here's the empty option. So if I double click on this, and you'll see it goes a bit weird, something disappears. Don't worry about that too much. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to find an image. Now I have some. If I can remember where they are. I'm sure look how organized I am. Of course I can. So I'm just going to go back in, and I've got all of these images in here. And what I want to do is find this image here. That's okay. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to place that in. So I'm just going to click and drag it so that it's quite a lot bigger. Now you'll see by doing it this way, what happens is that we lose the color, but the image takes up all of the type. And that's why where you have the blacker parts of the image, it's not really working. So what we might do is just delete that option, and I'll show you with another one. This is where experimenting can become actually quite fun, because some work, some don't. So it's always good to give it a go. I have all of these images here for this very reason. Let's just place this one in. I'm going to place it in really large because what I want is this sort of texture. So again, like the only thing that has become rasterized is this image here, is the image that I've placed in. Everything else is still vector, which is great. So, you know, you might want to muck around with things like that, but just know the difference between adding, so here my type is in this section here. You can't see it because it's white, but all of the type is in there. And I've added this in, so the type becomes the main object, and this becomes sort of the mask. So you lose your color. In this instance, it's black and white, so it really doesn't make that much of a difference. But it might make a difference if it's color that you're after. So just by adjusting that, now look how cool that is. A little bit of experimentation. You've got some variation of tone in there. You've got some variation of texture. And of course, you've got your type just sitting in the capsicum really nicely. So all you've done is used your pen tool to create an outline. You've used your distort and your envelope distort and mesh option, and you just created all of those different layers of the type there, and then you've just added in something to give it a little bit of texture there. So that's just one option that you can do. So we're just going to double click back on this one to come back to our main image. And so just to reiterate again that it's the opposite here. So because I wanted the gold color, I place this into the main part, and then the clipping mask becomes my type. So it just creates a shape to cut around this. So I hope that all makes sense. Okay, so there's exercise number 1 for this week, and I hope you have a little bit of fun with it. In the next video, what we're going to do is have a look at creating a brush in Illustrator and creating sections so that we can make a bespoke bit of type. Thanks.